today we are with Coach Greg Lovelady of the University of Central Florida, the baseball coach there. And he's part of our Young Gun series, some coaches who have had tremendous success early in their careers and are on paths to great things ahead. And part of that is the credibility that they've been able to build fast. Um, so Coach Lovelady has had success as a player and as a coach, two World Series as a college baseball player. That is incredible. So was a winner as a baseball player and as a coach. So with that being said, Coach, could you just give us a little bit about your journey and the success that you've had?
Yeah, I just kind of I chalk it up to a lot of luck and just good timing. But obviously just tried to work really hard and put myself in a situation when that timing came that I had put myself in a good situation to take advantage of some of that luck. But I wasn't a great high school player. Got an opportunity to walk on at what was my dream school at the University of Miami. I grew up there, and again I was okay with just riding the coattails and to a national championship. I mean, that was my goal. I had grown up watching Miami play in Omaha and at Rosenblatt and wanted to be a part of that. So I was willing to ride coattails to that and just get a jersey with my name on it and walk away with a national championship ring. But I just went in there and worked hard, kept my mouth shut early on. And again, some luck, some injuries and things like that. Next, I ended up starting in 2 national championship games and ended up signing with the Marlins and played a year of pro ball. And then really at that point decided I really wanted to get into coaching. So an opportunity came back to go back to Miami and coach. So I did that for 3 years. Got to learn a lot about the game from a different side and kind of get the curtain pulled back from a player to a coach. And that was a blast. And then I got an opportunity. Rob Cooper, who's now the head coach at Penn State, got the head coaching job at Wright State up in Dayton, Ohio, and offered me the recruiting coordinator job to be the pitching coach. And it's just funny how things work out, man. Like I really had no idea. I thought I'd go there for a couple of years and kind of get my recruiting experience. That was a big thing of trying to find a job, as I didn't have any recruiting experience after those 3 years at Miami. 12 years later at Wright State, I was still there and had the time of my life. It was one of the greatest experiences. I'm blessed for all the people that I met there, the players to the AD. I mean, they're all still good friends, and met my wife there. So, we built Wright State into an unbelievable program from what we thought was a really downtrodden program in terms of mid-major to probably one of, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 mid-majors in the entire country at the time. So, but I was the assistant for 9 years, and then Rob moved on to Penn State. I took over as the head coach and had 3 great years there, and then got the offer to come down to UCF and just finished my 4th season here. So it's been a great ride. A lot of great timing, a lot of luck. Again, you go to Wright State and just things work out that you do well, and Coop leaves and you get to be a head coach. And it's just really, really hard. It's a super competitive job. And you just got to put yourself in the right situation. But there was plenty of jobs that I didn't get over the course of my career. So, things don't always work the way you think they should. And there's a lot of very talented coaches out there. So a lot of it is luck. Even the UCF job, I had to have a couple people probably turn the job down before I got it. And so, you just done a good job of just trying to work hard and do good things and then some luck and what have you has put me in a really good spot.
Yeah, I love it, Coach. So timing and luck might be a small part of it, but when you look at the amount of wins you've racked up as a player and as a coach, there's probably a lot more to it than just luck. It looks like you've built or been a part of building cultures that win. So could you explain a little bit about some of those cultures that were positive, winning, and then now what you've carried over to UCF?
Well, man, it all comes from the University of Miami. I mean, just the culture that was there, that Coach Frazier and the Coach Morris really built was something that was special. I mean, it was something that when you walked on campus that you almost felt like you turned into not a superhero, but like you just became a lot better baseball player by just setting foot into the building. The people that had come before you, the expectations, the swag that all Miami sports had. It was just kind of something that whether you knew about it or you didn't know about it, the minute you stepped foot on campus, you became about it. And again, that was something that the coaches and the players that came before, my group had really set the tone of. And for me, I think that ended up being captain my senior year of that at Miami. And for me, it was like I was on one side of the fence, like as a fan, and getting to see what this program was about and getting to see how much it meant to people and the things that you could do, and then switching it over and then not wanting those people to kind of view me the same way that I viewed the players when I was on the other side of the fence as a fan. And so that meant a lot to me in making sure that we kind of upheld our end of the bargain and continued to build and uphold the things that people before me had done. And my heroes, I mean, I grew up idolizing Charles Johnson, and I wanted to make sure that I did a good job of continuing the things that he did. But the swag and the belief and just the confidence that we had, but also the teamwork. I mean, there was a lot of things that went bad sometimes at Miami, things off the field or just things that were out of our control. And even as a group of players, like I remember having a team meeting my senior year. We had gotten swept by Cal State Fullerton for the first time in Miami history ever, being swept at home. And we had a players only meeting, and it was like, I don't care about the media. We don't care. Like, we have a job to do, and we've got to make sure that we show up every day and put the work in. And it was something that meant a lot to us. It wasn't something that we needed the coaches to motivate us, or it was something that we were very motivated as players to want to be able to accomplish. And especially as our last, as the seniors who kind of led the meeting, like this was our last go. And that's always meant something to me. I mean, when I was a junior, we didn't go to Omaha, and I saw some of the seniors and the anguish and the pain. And I've always kind of coached that way of making sure that the younger kids understand that, yeah, you're going to get more opportunities to do great things, but these seniors, they deserve us, the staff and you young guys, to give everything that we have every single day, because this might be their last opportunity, whether it's to play baseball, whether it's to go to play in a regional or a super regional or college World Series, whatever it is. Some of these guys can be the last time they ever put on a baseball uniform. Like, we owe it to them to go out and do everything that we possibly can. So just learning all of that as a player and kind of seeing that has really kind of shaped a lot of the stuff. And then just as you start to coach and you start to study and understanding how important culture is, and seeing what a bad culture looks like and what that can do to your program, and seeing what a good culture can do. And then just trying to find ways to be able to feed that culture and build that culture, and understanding what things are important and what things aren't important, but also understanding how to handle some adversity and but also understanding that it's so player driven, and you got to do a very good job of trying to build that within the leaders of the team or whatnot. And as it trickles down, I mean, that's you can be the best. You can believe in culture. You can be all about the culture. You can study culture. You can try to implement culture. But once it starts trickling down to the players, if there's a group of guys or players that don't believe in it, or they can kill it. You know what I mean? And so I think from a coaching, you can definitely kill the culture. I mean, if you're not providing or trying to provide a good culture, it makes it harder. It's also not impossible for the players to provide that culture on their own and kind of be, to be able to grow in lieu of, or the coaching staff can be a roadblock the players themselves have to go around. But you can also be, like I said, the great culture guy. But if you don't have players that are believing and buying in, and you're not getting them, you're not providing something for them to believe in, then it can stop there. And so just between reading and Rob Cooper was a great mentor of mine, and just a guy that I learned so much from. But just the things that I've read and just understanding how important culture is, and just been able to build some great cultures. And somewhere, Wright State, I crossed the hall. I went from an assistant to a head coach. I'd recruited all the players. I had been with them for years. Like, I had already this buy-in, and so it was a lot easier. I come to UCF where I don't recruit any of the kids. It was a lot different. And so having to build that culture has taken some time, and that's been a real eye opener for me. Where I walked in the door in Wright State, and within the first 3 weeks, I felt like, man, this culture is unbelievable. Where at UCF, it's taken me some time of trying to make sure that everyone's on the same page and getting the right kids on the bus. I mean, I'm a big John Gordon guy, so just believing in the energy bus and believing that you got to have the right people, and that's taken some time. But it's also I think our culture is where we at because we have a great synergy of everybody, the players, the staff, the assistants, the strength coach, the trainer. Like, we have to have synergy on all of us. I think that just gives us the best opportunity. Again, it's not the only opportunity, and there's things that the players can overcome. They can overcome bad coaching and bad synergy if you have the right kids. But if you want to have the perfect scenario, I think you got to have synergy between all parts of the program. And when you do that, it's really fun to see a culture grow.
There's so many great points there. With that synergy, is there anything you're having a lot of success with, or anything specific you're doing at UCF to help create that synergy?
Well, I mean, I think I try to, I'll have like a retreat with my entire staff and just go over some of the things that I think are important and how important I believe that my staff is, and not saying like, hey, this isn't my program. Like, this is our program. We're all involved, the players, the staff, like we all have to be committed and working together. And we all have to check our egos at the door. We all have to understand that I'm willing to take, advice from whether it's my strength coach or my trainer or my student manager. Like, if you see something that I'm not doing a good enough job of, I want to know about it. I want to know if you're hearing things or seeing things, or if you would do something different. If my coaching staff that have come from other places, like, have you done something different that works better, or whatever the case is. But at the same time, like, you guys have to be willing to do the same thing. Like, if one assistant thinks another assistant needs, hey man, like, why don't you have you ever tried this? And let's have those conversations. Let's be open to that. Strength coach, like, hey man, like, hey, we're doing something in the weight room, but you're asking this kid to do something else out here on the field that kind of doesn't match what we're trying to do. Like, the movement patterns, like, doesn't match. So how do we do something like, hey, this is what I would say you need to do. Well, okay, same thing in the weight room. Like, hey man, like, we're trying to do this movement pattern on the field, but this weight room exercise doesn't mirror that as well as we need it to. And so being able to have those conversations and then being upfront, being like, hey man, you need to understand that we're all trying to do something great here. We're trying to build something great, but we need all of you to be all in. But all in means that you've got to be willing to listen and understand and have a dialogue and conversation. Like, hey, why are we doing this? Like, so let's have some conversation, because this is what I'm seeing, or this is what I'm concerned about, and let's have some conversation on why we're doing what we're doing in that area or this. And again, it's not just me; it's everybody. And if somebody comes to me, I want to have that same type of conversation. Like, I don't understand. This is what I'm seeing. What are you trying to accomplish as the head coach in this area when we're trying to do this in practice? Well, I'm trying to get this out of the kids. Well, that's not what we're getting out of it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, what do I need to do different, or how do let's throw some ideas around on how do we get to this goal of what I'm trying to accomplish? How do I get there to a different way? So I think just having meetings, and I'm not a big meeting guy. Like, I don't have a daily meeting with the staff. I mean, we're obviously in a very compacted area, so we end up in one office. Sometimes a lot of days, we just matriculate into one office and it starts conversation about something. But I'm not a big, like, okay, we're gonna have a staff meeting every day, or we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But I do try to have a retreat every year, or some kind of big meeting where we just go over the goals of the program and understanding, reiterating how important I think synergy is between the staff. Because again, like, I think a big culture killer, and I've seen it from friends and some close confidants, where as a head coach and I'm preaching something, and then the players go somewhere else, and I'm not there, whether it's in the weight room, in the training room, in a bullpen session, in the cages, and the thing that I am preaching isn't getting preached by another coach. And so now you've got one coach preaching one thing, one coach preaching another. And I think that gives a lot of confusion. I think it shows division in the staff. And so I think that can be an absolute culture killer. And so having everyone on the same page, understanding what my expectations are. Now, that a lot comes to do with hiring too. Like, I've got to find people that I believe in, that believe in the same type of things, and that, understand like what the goal is. And hey, this isn't my again, it goes back to, this isn't my program. So let's meet and talk about what we think are important. Here, this is what I think are important. If you disagree, let's have a conversation with that, because I need you to be on the same page. Because when you go out and that trickle down effect goes out to the players, like, you better be on the same, it better be a similar message. It better be backing it up. It better be taking the things that I'm talking about in a team setting, and then going and using those as an individual setting. Like, hey, we're going to be about good body language. Okay, well, then when you go out there and you're throwing your pen and I'm not there as a pitching coach, and the guy has bad body language, like, you better make a point of it. You better stop the bullpen and have a discussion, or you better emphasize, hey man, make sure coach talked about body language this week in our mental game meeting. Like, we need to make sure that we're showing good body language in our bullpen, or whatever the case is. So that kind of being able to take what the group message is and being able to filter it through, the different parts of the program, like, that synergy is, to me, uber important. Again, it's not the only thing, because there's a lot of great teams that have overcome bad coaching and bad culture within the coaching, or whatever the case is. Like, and the players can kind of take it upon themselves. So again, it's not the only way, but I think for me to have the best way to be successful and have put yourself in the best situation to have success, having synergy and trying to make sure that you are having meetings, and again, if I go out and, I'm going to show up when I want to show up, and hey, man, let me go watch this bullpen today just to check in on guys. And if I see something that's not going the way I want to in terms of a culture standpoint, then I want to meet about it and talk about it. Just, hey man, I need to do a better job of this, or whatever the case is. But again, I expect my coaches to do the same thing. Like, hey coach, like, you talked about body language in your mental game meeting on Monday, and Thursday at practice, like, your body language sucked. Like, and I need to know that. Like, I've got to have the self-awareness to hopefully not do that, but I'm not going to be perfect. And I'm going to have people that I need checks and balances too, to make sure that I've got a staff that, believes in what we're talking about it, but has the trust in me to know that I'm not going to, like, be offended by them trying to make our program better.
Coach, that is awesome. There's you just hit on a lot of key points with the elite programs. So to highlight a couple, even back to the Miami story, culture is driven from the coaches, but the elite cultures are when people other than the coach take it over. So if you look at how the coaches drove that, they had the tradition, but that players only meeting, that's one of those indicators that culture has arrived. That the behavior, that the people in that are perpetuating that culture, and it's bigger than the coach. And it looks like that is transferred over to UCF, to where the program is getting bigger than you as the coach. You're handing that over. You're giving the alignment, and I agree. Alignment is one of the things that kill programs. If an athlete's hearing one thing from you and they hear something else from another, it creates confusion, and no one performs well when they're confused. So that's incredible, Coach. There's so many great things that you highlighted there that a lot of people can learn from. And one of the things that kind of drew my interest there was the credibility piece. You talked about the credibility that you gained at Wright State was almost instantaneous. So you went from assistant coach to head coach, and it was quick. You had credibility, but coming to UCF, how did you build that credibility as a new coach coming in there?
Well, I mean, I think it takes time. And I think that one of my biggest downfalls when I came here, looking back, was that being that my first head coaching job was at Wright State, and I just had to cross over the hall, and it was so easy. I kind of thought that that's what it's always going to be like. And I could just do the same kind of things and make the same types of decisions, and I'm going to have the same type of results. And I think that was a mistake of mine, looking back now. And it takes time. I think it takes trust. I think, and again, from when you're at Wright State and that whole time, I recruit the kids for 2 years before they even show up on campus. And then some of those guys had been in the program already for 3 years when I took over. So I had built a 5-year relationship with those kids, being the recruiting coordinator, being their point person every single day. And whether, I was very involved in the Wright State program just because when I first got there, I was the only assistant. It was just me and Rob. And so, I coached third base. I was the pitching coach. I was the catching coach. So I had a lot of hats. So I was involved with not just the pitchers or just the catchers. I was involved with all the kids from a recruiting standpoint, even from an offensive standpoint. I threw a ton of BP. So I was involved with all the players. And I really earned the associate head coach title. I mean, like I was doing a lot of different things there just because of the way the program was built and financially how it was supported and all those different kinds of things, especially early on in my career. Later on in my career, we started, we had another paid assistant, but because I had been so submerged into the every being a part of everything, it was just part of the thing. So I had built relationships for anywhere from 3 to 5 years with every player on that team before I even stepped foot as a head coach. And so again, I think instantaneously the kids were very excited for me. I think they had known how hard I had worked and all that kind of stuff. And again, I think I had done a really decent and lucky job of recruiting really good kids that really, were just typical Midwestern kids that were just great people. And so they just embraced me immediately. And then I hired 2 unbelievable assistants who, again, were young, who had played at the program, who played for me. So, again, we already had that synergy of I had recruited them and played and coached them. And so, again, there was a lot of luck and just things that worked out that kind of allowed us to be really, really good, really build the program from a 36, 37, win team to a 42, 43 win team. Was just being able to kind of make I made some great decisions in hiring and doing those different types of things. But I think the biggest thing with culture is it does take time. It's not an overnight thing. It's something that you really have to put time and effort into. You're going to have issues with kids that, again, when you don't recruit kids, I think that's part of some of the problem too, is in the recruiting process, you talk about the things that matter to you. You talk about why the program is going to be so successful. You talk about the things, what your expectations are. You talk about those things in the recruiting. And that kid says, I want to be a part of that. Like, I'm signing up for that. I'm committing to be a part of that culture. Like, I want that in my life. Like, I want that discipline, or I want that structure, or I want that type of coaching. So they are signing up for it. Now, when you take over a program that you didn't recruit any of the kids, none of them signed up for that. They didn't sign up for any of that. And so you're going to have some kids that buy in. I mean, we had 13 seniors when I took over UCF, and those kids were very dedicated and bought in almost immediately. It was amazing that those kids, and then we win the championship my first year, and then those kids all leave. And now it's like, okay, now I got to get down into the weeds and really figure out how to build this culture from a long-standing foundational standpoint, where just from what the seniors had been through when I had gotten here, like, they were just hungry and thirsty for that, what I was bringing to the table. And so, then it became a little bit more of a grind and a little bit more of, okay, we got to get the right kids, and now we got to get our own recruits in here. And there's going to be kids that buy in and that weren't part of our recruit, but there are also going to be kids that don't. And so understanding how to try to navigate that, how to try to understand getting everyone on the same page. I did have some synergy issues with staff and stuff like that. So just trying to fit all those pieces of getting the things, the foundational, the base of building that great culture, and then trying to continue to stack and stack and stack. And so obviously the last 12 months, we really, I think, got the foundation right. And so we've really started to build, what I think is the culture that we need to have in terms of having long-term success. And, it's just fun to be able to build it. Again, I look back now and I'm like, man, like I was impatient, and, I had high expectations or unrealistic expectations of, I'm just going to pick up Wright State and just come over here and drop it in Orlando with different players, and it's going to be the same. And that's not real. That was an unrealistic thought process, an immature thought process, and an inexperienced thought process. And so, so it was a struggle for a year or two, where it was like, man, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I feel like I'm doing the same things. I'm the same person. Like, I'm making the same decisions. I'm duplicating what I did at Wright State, and I'm not getting the same results. And it wasn't that I wasn't getting the same results. I just put 12 years into Wright State's culture, where here I had put in 2 or 3, you know what I mean? And so, not having that self-awareness is it was a learning experience for me. And one of those things where I punch myself every once in a while to you idiot, like, what were you thinking? Like, duh, that's not going to work. Like, that the time frame wasn't going to work. Like, that was idiotic of you to think that. So
So that's great. So what if you had it to do over again, that transition from being an assistant coach to a head coach, is there anything you would do differently?
At Wright State, from the assistant coach to the head coach?
Yeah.
No, no. Like it was. I mean, it worked out perfectly. And again, like I don't look back and say, man, you did everything perfect. It just luck and the hiring of great people um, and great players and again, kids that were very excited. Like when I was named head coach, just the amount of love and excitement that those players gave me was awesome. And I just think it was like the perfect storm of we had the right kids and I hired the right people and we had the right thing going and it was just ready to take that next kind of step. Um, so no, I mean, I guess the biggest thing I would have done is, when Coop left, like, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to take over as a head coach? And am I going to go to Penn State with them? Looking back now, I should have never even thought. I mean, there shouldn't have been even a question of what should I do next. Like, I'm going to take over the head coach, and this is what's going. You know what I mean? Like, of
Yeah.
course, this is what's going to happen. Like, I think I underestimated how great the foundation of building something even better was than maybe I even thought. Because I think a lot of people told me like, you can't do any more at Wright State. Like you guys went from the bottom to the top, like, and you can't go any higher. Like you can't take that program financially. The conference, you can't take that program any higher. And so that put some doubt, at first. And I just kind of didn't believe it. But, there was definitely like, man, like some people that are important are saying these things about what they think this program can be. And luckily I didn't listen to them and I believed in something bigger than that. And we were able to go farther and to win our first regional game and go to 2 regional championships and build a powerhouse in terms of we could beat anybody in the country at any time and draft picks over draft picks and not just your occasional draft pick, but 6 or 7 guys getting drafted in a year. Like that was unheard of at Wright State, and we were able to do that, and it was a total team effort.
And Coach, you've mentioned your assistant coaches, those great hires a couple of times. So I've got to ask, what is it that you looked for in those assistant coaches? How how was that hiring process so good?
Again, some luck. I mean, the hiring. I think the most stressful and the hardest part of my job is hiring people. I mean, interviews are really difficult. I'm a very slow, meticulous person when it comes to it because of it. The whole adage of, slow to hire and quick to fire. Like I have 100% immersed myself in that in making sure that I hire the right people because I think it's easy, just like it is in the recruiting process in an interview to go in there and sound like you know what you're doing and sound like you believe in the same things and put on a front or whatever the case is, and then not really back that up when time to hit the put your feet to the road or whatever. So I was just very slow in trying to find the right person, people that I could trust, people that I thought had the same belief system. Obviously at Wright State, having people that were in the program and understanding that we had a special thing and that it was different and it was it wasn't your typical athletic department. It was, a smaller athletic department that we had to work, and that the things that we had to overcome at Wright State, just in terms of not having football and not having a national brand and all that kind of stuff, and dealing with 11 other Division I schools that kind of had some of those things away from the baseball field that kids cared about, and understanding those pitfalls. And so having 2 players that chose to go to Wright State and didn't care about that other stuff, that was a big thing to understand that, hey, man, these guys understand. They get it. They've been in the program. They've also understand what we've done to be successful. So there wasn't going to be a learning process. It was going to be able to kind of take, again, the foundational stuff and not try to change the foundation, but let's build onto the foundation. And then just both had great backgrounds. Both had just just one of them was already on the staff as the volunteer. So I had been with him and again, I coached him and whatnot. So, but we had been, kind of coaching together for a couple of years and, away from, kind of, you get into those situations where, hey, what would you do? What would you want to do if we were running the program? You know what I mean? Those kind of conversations when you're on the road. And so I was very excited about that. And then that was with Justin Parker, and then Jeff Mercer, comes from a coaching family, and just what his game plan was, and what his ideas were, and just the work ethic, just to see both those guys, because they both were volunteers at the time, and so just to see their work ethic. Like at the end of the day, you wanted some people that were going to work, that wanted to get out there and put time in with the players, put time in recruiting, but also again had the same mindset. And so they by far exceeded my expectations. So that's when you talk about the luck and yeah, I mean, I think these guys can be really good assistant coaches. And whatever that is, like, man, they're going to be 8s. Like, great. Well, they were 11s. You know what I mean? Like they totally outshot the expectations, which again was a lot of luck involved. So, but that was a big part of it. It wasn't a Greg Lovelady thing for sure. This was a team effort that exactly all the things we talked about, the synergy. We had it, but we were all young. We're all about the same age. Like, again, they had played for me, so I was a young coach when they played, so we got along really well. So again, that whole process started way before I hired them, but that was something that had been unbeknownst to us, like something that was starting to build the relationships, the foundation of our coaching kind of together. That all started way before we even knew that we'd ever get a chance to do that all together. And so it was a lot of fun, but it was a big part of our success.
Hey, Coach, that sounds like you hire some great leaders in there. With that leadership and looking at your athletes, your ball players, what do you expect out of their leadership on the diamond?
It's hard to say because I think that everybody is different. I mean, I think there's so many ways to be a leader. You have the Michael Jordan, right, on one side of the spectrum, and you just have the quiet, shows up every single day, never says a word, but works as hard as anybody on the team, kind of on the other side of the spectrum. And you have everything in between. And so I think you got to make sure that you're allowing them to be themselves. You're there to help. You're there to push. You're there to kind of try to demand some more leadership out of them. But you got to make sure you demand it in a way that they feel comfortable. And so you get some quiet, reserved person that's non-confrontational, and you try to get them to be Michael Jordan. It doesn't work, and I think that ends up being a huge failure. And so you're trying to get different. You need to have different leaders that do different things, that are good at different things, but that again, that they are willing to step out, somehow step out of their comfort zone in some way. Again, if you're that Michael Jordan, and maybe he can't be a 10 on that side of the spectrum, but can you get him to be an 8? Or if you're a 1 and super quiet, and you're the hardest worker, you don't have to be the guy that comes in the locker room and busts down the door when things go wrong, but the work ethic that you show. We talk about lift while you climb. Can you just take 2 people with you to go, hey man, you come and hit every day at 10 o'clock at night, but you hit by yourself. Can you just bring 1 person with you? Can you bring 2 people with you? And can you start to people to mirror the things that you do because of your leadership? And so you have to be willing to go out and say, hey man, like, why don't you come hit with me? Like, you've been struggling. Like, I think I can help you with a couple things. Like, I'm hitting tonight at 10 o'clock. Like, let's grab some food and we'll come over to the cage and hit tonight. Like, and can you get that person to feel comfortable to do that and bring somebody with you? Because that group of 2 becomes a group of 3, becomes a group of 4, becomes a group of 6. And so that's how that leadership can happen. Now you got the other guy that, hey man, like, we're not playing very well. We're not giving great effort in practice. And like, it's great that I can say, hey man, we're not giving great effort in practice, but can you give the same message that I'm giving? Because it might be me more coming from within, like, hey man, like, this is not acceptable. Like, this practice right now is not acceptable. Like, if I say it, like, all right, yeah, we know, like, we got, but and sometimes it works, but it's also more important. It's, to me, it means more when somebody inside the family, inside the player says, hey man, like, this is not good enough. But they have to be willing and they have to be comfortable being that guy that gets up and says, like, hey man, like, this isn't right. Like, and we've got to be better. Like, we've got to flip the switch right now, or like, we've got to make better decisions tonight. We got to come out tomorrow with a lot more energy. I mean, those kind of conversations, those kind of meetings, those kind of things. And some of those guys are going to do it in front of the whole team. And some of those guys are going to go to a couple of guys and go, hey man, like, you're one of the best players on the team, and you're not bringing the energy. But some of those leaders have to have that relationship with that guy and feel comfortable, because there is navigating the innerlings of the locker room and who's friends and who's not and all that kind of stuff. Like, not everybody is willing to be, like, lose friendships. Like, the Michael Jordan doesn't care about being your friend. He cares about winning. Not everyone is that comfortable in that, being able to be that side of the spectrum where they're just willing to cut people's heads off to get what they want. So there is that, hey man, well, how are people perceiving me and how do I look? And so you've got to kind of talk through some of that stuff on a leadership side with your guys. And, you know, I have a leadership council where I kind of have and it's not the older guys. It's a wide array of players, a sophomore, a junior, a senior, a freshman, you know, some pitchers, some hitters. So that, again, that if we have meetings and I try to, again, empower them, like I really try to empower my players to make decisions, like disciplinary wise, like, hey man, like this kid screwed up. Let me go to the leadership guys. And what do you think? What do you think about this player? Like, is this something is this a one-time thing? Is this something that you guys feel like is detrimental to our program? Because at the end of the day, if it is, and you guys are okay with it, then this program's not gonna be very good. And so, but empowering them to help make decisions, like, what do you think? And hey, we have this kind of games coming up, and we have this situation coming up. Like, what are your thoughts? What would you want to do? How do you want it to be handled? And trying to get their input and stuff. But then again, the things that I give them, then I need that to trickle down through the rest of the team and understand that if we're talking about it in the leadership council meeting that it's important, then you guys need to, again, that synergy and that having each other's back. Like if one of the leadership guys stands up in a practice and makes a big stink, and I'm going to have his back. But I need to know the same thing, that if I get up in practice and I get after guys, that when they go in the locker room, that they're not going to be like, yeah, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, that they're going to have my back. And if there's something that they don't believe in, I need them to have my back, and I need them to come to me and tell me, like, hey man, like you got on that guy, and that you were wrong. You know what I mean? Like you made it sound like he didn't care or whatever the case is. And like, I'm telling you, like, we're in the locker room, this guy cares. Like, so again, I need to have that checks and balances from my players. And so from that leadership, like, it goes both ways. Like, I need them to filter the stuff down. I need them to filter the stuff up. And I need to hold them accountable, and they need to hold me accountable. And I think that being able to have those situations and then kind of push them, like, hey man, like I need, you know, individually, I try to meet with my players every 3 weeks. So every week I have a group of guys that comes in and meets with me at some point just to check in, academics, mental game, family, everything. It could be a 5-minute meeting, it could be a 20-minute meeting, just depending on, you know, how much they're willing to talk about. And I try to just give them a platform. Like, you know, I think, especially with mental health these days. But I think that over my coaching career so many times, it's like, why didn't you say something? And sometimes it's just they don't have the platform, or they're scared and they don't want to be too vulnerable and all that kind of stuff. So I try to put them into a situation where they can be vulnerable. But then again, that gives us the relationship and the trust where I can push them, like, hey man, like I need you to get more guys to follow you. I need you to take guys with you, lift while you climb. I need you to get, you know, you're a little bit more vocal. Like, I need you to push a little bit more. Like, when things aren't going well, like I need you to get in guys a little bit and not be scared of that. And so that gives me some one-on-one time with everybody that I can kind of push them. And so from a leadership standpoint, I think that allows me some one-on-one time to kind of coach and coach them up on being leaders and whatnot, but also get some feedback so that I can be better at coaching them on leaders. And again, they're the ones in the locker room, so I can kind of learn from them about leadership as well.
Coach, that's amazing. You perfectly described what we call the 10-80-10 principle, to where you're 10% the elite athletes on the team, the leaders, they have to pull those average players up to that elite level. And when you get that and you achieve that, you can do so many incredible things as a team. And that starts from the coaches who really empower those leaders on your team to elevate the performance of others. So it's one of the best descriptions of that 10-80-10 principle that I've ever heard. And in there, you also mentioned your mental game meetings. So one of the things that we see a lot of is when you have an athlete to where the physical game and the mental game don't match up, and the mental game pulls down that physical game. So what advice could you give athletes or even coaches to help athletes improve that mental game to match up with their physical talent?
Well, the first thing is you have to coach it. Like, you know, I think and from the baseball world, you know, Yogi Berra talking about, like, well, the game's 90% mental and 10% physical. And you talk to any person in the big leagues in AA, they all say that AA to the big leagues, is the same exact talent. There is no difference between double A talent and big league talent. The difference is what's in between their ears. And so we talk so much about how this game is mental and how only, you know, because there's so much failure involved, and it's so difficult on a day-to-day basis. So if you believe that the game is 90% mental, then why do we not spend 90% of our practice time on the mental game and 10% on the physical game? Like that's kind of the analogy that I use is why do we not spend more time on the mental game? And so again, this is what, again, I didn't know anything about the mental game when I came to Wright State, and Rob Cooper is a big mental game Jedi, Ken Reviza guy. Andy McKay, who's mental skills coordinator, peak performance guy for the Colorado Rockies, now the minor league player development guy for the Seattle Mariners. These are all mental gurus, and so I've kind of soaked in and stolen. I mean, again, stealing stuff from John Gordon, Brian Kite, like all these guys. You just try to steal as much information as you possibly can. Nothing I've ever come up on my own, but you're trying to understand how important the mental game is. And so that was my first big thing, was why do we talk so much about how important the mental game is and we don't coach it? And so again, the analogy I use in the recruiting process, you give up a 3-run homer to tie the game in the bottom of the 9th inning. Like, we had a chance to win it. You blow the game. And a coach screams out, hey man, like, comes out to a mound visitor, hey man, forget about it. Worry about getting this guy out. We'll score a run the next inning. Perfect. Awesome. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to forget about it and then worry about the game's not over. We still got to move forward. But as a coach, did you teach them how to forget it? Did you teach them how to be able to move past it? And so again, like, it's great coaching cue and like great advice, like, forget about it, but you had better have taught that person how to forget about it, or it's not that easy to forget. You know, you got 7,000 people either booing you or they're cheering you because you're on the road and you just gave them back, you know, a chance to win this game. And so have you given them? And so really diving into the mental game and studying it and making it a part of our program. It's one of the pillars of our program. I think this game especially is so mental that we have to invest time into it. Social media these days, just the generation, the way they are, like the instant gratification, you know, they think that everyone's life is cookies and cream because of what they see on social media. So they judge themselves against this perfect world, and they're in an imperfect game. And it's an imperfect world, but this game is so imperfect in terms of the failure that you have. And those things that creep into your mind negatively and positively affect your performance. And so understanding that what we think and what our self-talk is and how much we visualize. I'm a big visualizer. All this stuff is going to lead to positive performance. It's going to allow you to be more consistent. It's going to allow you to have more success. It's not going to guarantee you success, but it's going to put you in the best mental state in order to have the best success. And that's where your physical part then takes over. And so you've got to obviously work on the physical and have those things, but you know, so many players can't cross the line from practice to the game. And why not? Well, it's all mental. And people say, well, there's this guy pulls his shoulder out when he does this and all that kind of stuff. Most of the time it's not a physical thing. Like, well, he doesn't do that. Does he do that in practice? Well, no. Well, then it's a mental thing. It's something that he's talking to himself or visualizing or thinking that is enabling him to continue the good mechanics from practice to the game. And whether that's, I got to cheat, or I got to try to hit a pull side home run right here, so my front shoulder pull, you know, all those different types of thoughts that go through your head cause some physical things that don't allow you to have performance. And so if we can be mentally where we need to be, then we can allow the things that we do in practice physically, and that's being free and easy and allowing our athleticism and fast twitch and all those kind of things to take over. Then we've got to be mentally tough. And so we spend a enormous amount of time in team meetings about the mental game, but we also have, those things are also culture building. We do some things that are kind of culture and mental game, but every week we're having some type of meeting about the mental game. I teach out of books about the mental game, but then we try to incorporate it into practice somehow. And whether that's trying to make kids perform with high heart rates, or just practicing the things that they're going to do in a game. Because as much as you can read about, okay, when this happens, I need to do this. If you haven't practiced it and all of a sudden it really happens to you, like you're like, oh man, what do I do? Like, okay, I'm supposed to do this. But if you haven't practiced, like, okay, and even being prepared, we talk a lot about self-awareness and knowing, like, when this happens, you know, we talk about red lighting, like I panic or I freak out. Like when an umpire doesn't call a strike, that's a strike. Like, I get pissed off and mad. So immediately when an umpire calls a strike, I should immediately have a response before I get pissed off. I should know that, okay, like I'm going to have a negative response here. Like, so I need to start doing X, Y, or Z in order to offset that negative reaction that I'm going to have, which is natural. Like, you're going to have negative reactions. Like, that's the thing about the mental game, is we're not trying to never have a reaction, but we're having a, how do I handle the reaction? Do I have a plan of how do I handle the reaction so that I can get back to where I need to be, my baseline or my best mental state in order to have the most success. And so not teaching it is, to me, a huge mistake. And again, I know that it's very difficult because you think, like, I don't know anything about the mental game. You get Heads Up Baseball and you read it, you make the kids read it, and you just take one step forward and you try to implement something into practice. It seems like maybe a big undertaking, and it's not. And I know for a high school level, if you're a head coach and you don't have a ton of help, it can be difficult, but you can implement things in practice and just practicing routines and practicing what you're going to do on deck in BP. Like, in batting practice, there's one guy hitting in the cage and usually 5 guys sitting around. Like, what can we do with those 5 guys during that just sit around time to practice? Like, let's go on deck. You're in the field. Go on deck and practice what you're going to do on deck. Practice what you're going to do. You know, we have it in the hole chair, so the kids have to sit there. That's where they really start to narrow their focus. Then they go into on deck, and then we'll go into the field and we'll practice, you know, their routine, what they're doing in between pitches and all that kind of stuff. And then they get to go hit. So now you have 4 or 5 guys doing something instead of 4 guys standing around, you know, looking at the clouds and chit-chatting about what they're going to do after practice while one guy's in the cage hitting, and they just keep rotating. Like, let's take advantage of some of that time for mental game stuff. We're big on visualization. We start every practice where the kids lie down in the outfield, and we spend 3 to 5 minutes just visualizing what that practice is going to look like, what do they have their self-awareness, what do they look like when they're doing something really well, like kind of out-of-body experience. Like, watch yourself doing something great, watch yourself doing something poor, something bad happening to you, and then what are you going to do about it? So, like, visualize the umpire or somebody making an error behind you as a pitcher. Well, visualize, what am I going to do to handle that, to be able to move on and move to the next pitch so that I'm practicing it. Visualize dogpiling at the end of the year. Visualize hosting. Like, we're going to visualize all these positive things. But the last thing we will do is visualize, okay, what is today's practice going to look like for you? What do you need to work on? Okay, I need to work on staying inside the ball better. Okay, I want you to visualize yourself practicing that. I want you to visualize working. I want you to, you know what I mean? And then, all right, let's go stretch. And now we've kind of narrowed our focus. We've kind of done some positive visualization. We've worked on a bunch of things. We've also focused on, okay, we've seen what we're going to do today. Now let's go do it physically. And so, again, the body and the mind is so powerful. The body doesn't know the difference between real and fake. Like, when I visualize myself doing something, like, my body thinks that my body thinks I'm actually doing that. It doesn't know that it's just a vision in my mind. And so being able to constantly do those type of things is physical practice, because your body is starting to do stuff. But that's also why we have to visualize positive things. If you visualize something negative, or, hey, don't do this, then you're visualizing, you're actually showing yourself doing that in that moment. Like, don't hang this breaking ball. Well, now I just pictured myself hanging the breaking ball. Well, my body will try to mimic that. And so I've got to think positively. Okay, I'm gonna throw this ball down, under this curveball down and away. Now I visualize that pitch path. And so then I can go and try to repeat that, what I just visualized in my head. And so understanding the power of the mind and visualization and the self-talk. And again, there's so much negative self-talk. I think, like, I got to do this, or I have to do this, or if I don't get a hit here, coach isn't going to be happy with me. Like, those types of things slow your nervous system down and don't allow you to play free and easy. And especially in this game where reaction is the number one thing that you need, like, you've got to, especially as a hitter, like, you've got to be able to react. And, like, if you're stiff, it's very difficult to be successful. And so clearing that mind to allow that athleticism, that fast switch to take over is, to me, one of the most important things. And so that's why we stress the mental game. We practice it so much. We incorporate it into every one of our practices. Every one of our meetings talks about visualization, talks about the mental game, talks about being able to play pitch to pitch and funneling ourselves. You know, we talk about the 15 seconds between pitches. Like, what are we doing in that 15 seconds to get back to where we need to be? It's not laser focused 24/7. It's get upset, have a reaction. What do I do? How do I reset? And then how do I commit to this next pitch? And getting myself, what does that look like for each individual player? to get back to, this is where my best mental state is in order to have the best chance of having success. I know that's a lot. I can go talk.
I love it. I could sit here and listen all day, especially about that. And I love the fact that you train it. So it doesn't happen if you don't train it. The mental game just doesn't happen on its own. And my background was in the military and going through Ranger School and some things like that. It taught you that if you can visualize it and you can train to it, then you build the confidence, and then you understand that we're the ones that put the barriers on ourselves. It's usually not physical. It's nothing else. It's the mental barriers that we put on ourselves. And when you break through that, it's amazing what you can achieve in life by overcoming that one barrier, two barriers that we put that are all mental. So I could talk about that all day. It's one of my favorite subjects. And in closing, one thing that we always ask our coaches that we're interviewing is when you're out there recruiting, you're seeing these programs, you're seeing these high school programs, club programs, all these different ball teams out there. What's some of the culture? What are some of the things that you see in those elite teams across the country that you see that you would want to share with other high school coaches that they should be looking at to replicate?
Well, I think it's a single belief. I think it's getting all the players to believe in something that's bigger than themselves. And that comes from a lot of different ways. That comes from culture building. That comes from just hard work. It comes from team building and getting those kids to go through something. And I mean, obviously, just again, sometimes it's just a difficult day of conditioning. Sometimes it's, just being able to. I love bus trips. Like, I believe getting in a bus and driving 7 hours is one of the best culture builders. It's something that when I was at Wright State, again, where we spent a lot of times on buses, and then coming to UCF where we spent a lot of times in airplanes, like seeing even from me as a head coach, like I would get on a bus the opening weekend of the season and the freshmen, I was like, man, how come I don't have the same type of relationships or just know the freshmen like I know the other guys? You know what I mean? And it was just a time thing. But those first 3 weekends of the season when we were stuck on a bus for 7 to 12 hours and you're just on this tube and you can't go anywhere and you got to being older, I got to go to the bathroom 8 times during that bus trip and I got to walk back and I just stop and start chatting and watch guys play cards or do whatever. And man, after those first 3 weeks, I'm like, man, I know these freshmen, how did that happen so fast? And it's just putting us in that type of situation. So I think with the players being stuck on that bus, these guys might not hang out as much with these guys, and all of a sudden you put them in a tube for 12 hours and they can't go anywhere. They start to build relationships, and so just putting them in those types of situations, but just having that culture where you just believe guys are fighting for something bigger than themselves. I mean, I think that's what the elite of the lead are all about. And because again, you're going to have players, and again, you don't have to have really good players. You have to have really good leaders that are willing to sacrifice, that are willing to again, even as a captain, as my senior year, I didn't play a ton. I wasn't the best player I might have been the worst player on the team. You know what I mean? And so, but knowing that all I cared about was going to Omaha and winning a national championship, and I was willing to do whatever I had to do, if that was be the best cheerleader on the bench or whether that was, be the guy that caught bullpens, I was willing to do that. But having people that are willing to do that, are willing to sack bunt, even though they think that they might be the best hitter on the team because that's going to be best for the team. And they're not going to complain about it. They're going to be knowing that that's what's best for the team. Having those types of guys and all believing in the same thing and pulling on the same side of the rope, everyone being on the bus. And to me, that's what the elite of the elite teams are able to do. You got to have talent. You can't take away talent, but you don't have to have the most talented team if you have the most mentally tough, close-knit, driven in one direction, one side, guys pulling on one side of the rope. If you have that, you're going to outplay the most talented teams every single time. And so when you go around and look and again, there's always outliers to everything, but I think when you look at, for the most part, you go, man, look at that group of guys, how much they love each other, how much they care, how much they believe in each other, how much they have each other's backs. That stuff is is probably the hardest thing to teach in a world where it's so individualized and so like, look at me and let me put my highlights on Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Like, and to get those guys that can really buy into that stuff is amazing. And it's, again, to see the opposite of guys that aren't like that, and to see it to really crumble a culture or hinder a culture. You got to make tough decisions. And I'll be honest with you, like, I think the hardest thing as a coach is to get everyone on the same. And what do you do when one of your better players is not on the bus, is not on the same side, is very, you know, wants to be about himself and that kind of stuff. Like, that situation is by far the hardest thing to deal with as a coach. And I've failed it sometimes, like being able to, man, like, I should kick this guy off the team. It's such a negativity, but he's such a good baseball player. Like, and you want to believe in yourself as a coach to be able to change them and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to get rid of those types of kids and make sure that you have kids that really believe in the bigger picture and the bigger mission, and understanding that if you believe to that bigger mission, the trickle down effect allows you to do all the things that you really want to do as an individual anyways. And it's much more rewarding. But also when that focus becomes outside of you, then the rewards and the accolades and the success for you personally shoots through the roof. And that's a hard thing to get guys to buy into. But that's obviously the ultimate goal.
Nice. Love it. So Coach, thanks for your time on all those things. And on the Titan Leader app, we put a lot of tools and resources out there for coaches that can help enact and put into practice some of the things that you talked about. So we encourage high school coaches to go download the app, take those tools and put those into practice so you can build those positive cultures. So again, thanks, Coach, for jumping on here, talking and sharing all your insights with coaches. And it was an awesome interview. So thanks again, Coach.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.